welcome back yet again. Welcome back yet again to the Paisan Sports podcast presented by Recliner Media Network. Today we have a special edition episode for you because we are going to be bringing in NBA insider Scoop B Robinson, waiting for him to join us. But until then, it's your host, as always, Dante Placido and Zach Deal of What's the Deal Sports. So I've got to ask, what's the deal with the Sixers getting blown out in game one of the Boston series? I mean, me and you watched the game together. It was excruciating. This game one was even worse. What's going on there?
Yeah, last night, I mean, a lot of people, the one thing all Sixers fans and affiliated Sixers people was saying is like, we didn't even get to bask in the glory of the Game 7 victory versus Celtics. It seemed like we turned around. I was so busy with all the sports media stuff that I have going on, trying to get some interviews out with through a bunch of different sports and a bunch of different companies. And I kind of was surprised to see that the Phillies, Sixers, and the Flyers were all in action last night. So it kind of caught me off guard a little bit. But yeah, that's what, I mean, we talked about it before. Philadelphia sports has been absolutely ridiculous for the past 2 weeks. And this kind of just adds a cherry on top to it. So this was kind of a game where, with that being said, 39 points obviously is rough. It looked horrible. It kind of seemed like a lot of similar stuff happened in this game one, as opposed to the last series versus Boston, where they were kind of just settling for the threes, which ended up killing Boston themselves in game 7. But as for the beginning of the series versus Celtics, I mean, the Sixers were kind of settling for threes and not getting downhill and attacking like we talked about. All the guys on the team being underrated in that department, and it kind of showed. So I would like to see them not settle for shots and kind of attack this defense. I also think, as much as I praised him on the last podcast on Sunday, Nick Nurse, I mean, he got completely outcoached by Mike Brown last night. I mean, those offensive sets that the Knicks were throwing at the Sixers was pretty ridiculous. I mean, they were running like a pick and roll, and then they would show somebody to flash out, and then the Sixers would chase that guy, and then there'd be a wide open corner three behind it, or like a wide open pocket pass into a certain spot on the court. So I think Nick Nurse, of all people, needs a little bit more time to prepare. And this is something we also talked about when Joel was banged up and hurt in the series until he came back. And the game he came back in, they didn't have success. We talked about them not having enough time to implement a game plan. Hopefully that's the narrative and the circumstance here. And Wednesday they get back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the funny thing to it, in my opinion, since you bring up, you know, the fact that the Phillies and Flyers were also playing, it seems like one trend we've been witnessing over the past few days is only one Philly sports team is allowed to win on a given night, right? Because the
Paisan picks the Philadelphia sports play of the day with all 3 teams or 4, however it shapes out. Those usually don't work. Those are those mythical bets that everyone's chasing out there that just aren't the wise.
Yeah, we should have known once the Phillies won that the Flyers and the Sixers were just absolutely cooked. The Flyers, however, I mean, they were up 2-0 in that game, and they eventually gave up 2 goals, went to overtime, and lost into overtime. So that was actually a heartbreaking loss, just, especially to go down 0-2 in the series, not just the Sixers.
I mean, also, I know we're supposed to be talking Sixers here, but it is the Paisan Sports podcast for the Flyers. After that game-tying goal and leading up into that game-tying goal, what that defense put Vladar through last night was absolute torture. Just absolute torture. There was absolutely... They had that one, was it TK that was on the, had the breakaway that missed the shot that was literally one-on-one with the goalie.
Yeah,
and I felt like he could have set up the goalie a little bit more and got closer to the net. It didn't seem like the closing in defenders were as
I thought during that breakaway we were going to win the game, and he just couldn't convert. And
and then just the amount of pressure
really that loss. But back to the Sixers, I mean, when you look at the fact that they get blown out in game 1, to me, it makes sense, right? I mean, they just played a game 7 2 days prior, less than 48 hours prior. Meanwhile, the New York Knicks were on 5 days rest. I mean, it seemed like kind of a mismatch in terms of which team is more rested and ready to go.
Yeah, and that was something that LeBron specifically talked about with the West shaping out, where the way that the West playoffs shaped out, those game 7s actually gave the Lakers an extra day to rest up for a team like the Thunder when they're going into a series down. On the betting books, the Lakers are like plus 1,500 with arguably the greatest player of all time, however you feel about that conversation, going into the series. That's absolutely ridiculous. But we got the special guest finally on here. Let's bring him on. Brandon Scoop B Robinson. What's going on, man? Thank you for joining the podcast once again. This is actually the second edition of us linking up to talk some hoops. So thank you once again.
No problem. Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Yes,
How's it
sir.
going,
Yes,
Scoop?
sir.
Man, I'm good. How you feeling?
As great as I was 24 hours ago, but it's game one. The Sixers get blown out game one, so I'm not feeling that great today. But it is game one. They got blown out in game one of the last series. I'm not overly worried about it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember that's the 7. But that I heard you guys saying before I came on that the Knicks had about 5 days rest. I was actually at game 6 in Atlanta, and they beat their ass. That didn't even feel like
I was talking about that. OG Anunoby had 26 at halftime, and then everybody in Philadelphia sports is trying to go down the line one for one, and they're like, "Oh, OG's got nothing for Paul George." I was like, "Dude, you guys are sleeping on OG." And actually, I met Kyle Lowry back in 2019 through a mutual friend, and that was when OG was still on the Toronto Raptors as well. And that was actually right around that was the same night they traded for Tobias Harris in the middle of the night. So that was just a ridiculous night in Sixers history. But I met OG Anunoby when he was like 19. And I mean, that dude's just an absolute dog. And you talk about two-way player currently in the NBA. He's one of the best faces of that department right now that the league has to offer.
Yeah, definitely. OG is not just a defensive stalwart. He's also a scoring magnet. I believe he had 29 points to close out that game. And Karl Anthony Towns finished with a triple-double again. And Jalen Brunson is you look at the Knicks and people just think that Jalen Brunson is just the key to start that engine, but it's really a collaborative effort. And it's interesting when I look at this series with the Knicks and the 76ers, I feel like there is some parity in the game that we'll watch tonight, game 1 with Oklahoma and the Lakers, because Oklahoma has a deep bench. The Knicks have a deep bench. The Sixers play about 6 or 7 guys, and then they run out of gas.
Yeah.
And you didn't ask this, but I'm going to say this. In order for the Sixers to be successful, you can't play breakneck speed. You got to pace yourself, but you can't just depend on 2 guys and a strong supporting unit of Oubre, as well as Andre. I was going to say Andre Blash. I meant Andre Drummond. I did an interview in Haywood before I got on the line with you.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah.
Andre Drummond. You kind of have and Paul George. You got to kind of have to beat that Knicks team. They got an answer for everything, and in order to beat them or at least compete with them, there's got to be more to that engine. And I'm really concerned for Joel Embiid in the long run. Because he's put a lot of mileage. I feel like this reminds me of the series between the Knicks and the Sixers 2 years ago, where he's playing on a bended knee, so to speak. And, he's always dealt with health issues. That's cool, but you need a supporting cast to kind of help guide that team.
Yeah, and you referenced some of the guys that the Sixers are relying on right now. I think Kelly Oubre is like 2 for 15 or 2 for 16 his last 16 3-point attempts. They also have Quentin Grimes, former Knick, so maybe he has a little bit of extra motivation to be that. But it's interesting to see a perennial playoff team like the Knicks, who have been in the top of the East for the past 3 years, and their old coach, Tom Thibodeau, who used to kind of run them into the ground, and now they've opened things up, and they actually have a bench that they're able to rely on and not just trying to push their starters 40-plus minutes every single night, which flared them out, even when they had success in the first round, but in the later rounds of the past couple Eastern Conference playoffs.
Yeah, you pretty much said it. I think the Sixers have their work cut out for them. The Knicks have their work cut out for them, because anytime you beat somebody that many points, there's no way you're going to allow somebody to beat you like that again. So I look at and when you looked at this series against Atlanta for the Knicks, Atlanta came back. I really feel like this game 1 was a carryover from Atlanta in game 6. And I don't foresee this being a 20 to 30 point shellacking like it was last night.
That's actually funny. I was going to use shellacking. I went with Broad Street beatdown, but shellacking was actually I was going to use in the promo of the post for bringing you on today, because that's exactly how I felt. When you start going into the vocabulary of words like shellacking, that kind of just shows you that there was nothing that the Sixers had to offer the Knicks in that series whatsoever. But As for the overall NBA, you're a guy that's seen a lot covering the NBA since a very young age, before you even turned a teenager. The first round of the playoffs used to be only 5 games, but it moved in the early 2000s to 7 games. A lot of people in the NBA circles are talking about this being potentially the best first round playoff series that they've seen in quite some time, arguably in the 2000s. How do you feel about that statement?
They say something like that every year.
Yeah. I mean, last year we got Tyrese Halliburton, the masterclass from him. So I don't know how much can top that too, but
listen, we say that about slam dunk contests. We say that about all-star. Well, we don't say it about all-star games. We say that more about three-point shootouts this time around. But in the past, we would say that about slam dunk contests. I think it's I think that's a flash in a pan statement. I get it from a fan and an observer perspective, but I think the quantitative numbers suggest that people are watching. I think when you look at just I think for the Sixers to keep it local, I think that this series and even the last series was coming of age for Tyrese Maxey. I think you're seeing a baton being passed, a changing of the guard, where it's become Maxey's team, and Embiid is the second option, which I think is nothing wrong with that. I think what's surprising to many people is how effective Paul George has been for so long and being durable for so long, and how much VJ Edgecombe came alive. Like, I remember a world last summer going into the draft where people were so gung-ho on Ace Bailey becoming a 76er, and VJ was exactly what the 76ers needed.
Yeah, you kind of just called us out right there.
What's funny is me and Zach, we had multiple shows before the draft, leading up to the draft, maybe even during the draft, I'm not sure. But the guy we kept saying we wanted was actually Ace Bailey. And since then, we've mentioned numerous times how wrong we were and how we're so glad.
The reason why we felt like that was because the Sixers have been starving for that forward that has versatility like an OG Anunoby that they haven't had. I mean, we went through the Tobias Harris era, and I know what he just did in Game 7, coming back in that series. But outside of paying Paul George like $50 million, we haven't been able to actually bring a guy like that onto the roster with that high of a draft pick in quite some time. So I was I was looking for a flashier guy to like build the most overall talented team. But the mesh, I actually wanted to build off that because you made a great point. I don't want to make a flash in the pan statement here, but I don't remember an NBA rookie coming in as a lottery draft pick and making this big of an impact for a playoff team when he's not like the face or the guy of the team running the engine. Absolutely. He just kind of does all the dirty work. He just goes out there, rebounds really well, uses his athleticism, and then picks his spots to attack.
So 2 things you said that stands out. One, I feel like the Sixers have not had a perimeter guy on their team, and they've been searching for that since Jimmy Butler left.
Yeah.
And they overpaid Al Horford, and then they brought in Tobias Harris, and then Ben Simmons left. See, Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, and Joel Embiid would work together, but Ben Simmons left, right? And VJ Edgecombe, to me, always fit, because I feel like people were so concerned. If you remember, the top 3 picks in the draft were Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey. I covered Dylan and I covered Ace Bailey at Rutgers last year while they were in college. And to me, Ace Bailey did not fit on that team. 1, because he's a star and he knows it, and he needed his own team. 2, we didn't really know what to expect of Philly going into this season, and there was some apprehension there as to what that would look like. 3, I feel like the Sixers overpaid for Paul George like they did for Al Horford, except Paul George worked.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, and you talked about fit. These are guys that they try to mesh with the Sixers, and they're going out And when they leave Philadelphia, they're going out and still making an impact around the league on championship or playoff perennial teams. So it's not like that. I think you make a perfect point as to where you try to mesh it. That also comes down to the coach and the rotations that you're running as well, and who you're putting out on the court, the 5 that you're rostering out on the court at one time. So I think that's a really good point for the Sixers. We just didn't really expect, if they did go the Ace Bailey route and they found themselves in this situation this year, maybe if Paul George still gets suspended and everything goes out and you play the what ifs there, maybe he's able to fill that spot for when Paul George was suspended as a forward, and maybe that helps. But I don't think he comes into a playoff series and is able to make the impact that VJ Edgecombe has been able to make. And that was something interesting too, is this NBA draft had just had 4 teams at the top were like, with that Dallas Mavericks roster, what they had going into the draft. Obviously it's different now, but we thought they could make a quick turnaround, especially with Cooper Flagg in the mix. You had the Spurs as the 2 seed in the West as the 2nd overall pick. The Sixers in the spot that they're in, and then the Hornets finally making a run towards the playoffs and making a name for themselves. What did you think about the top of the NBA draft in 2025? All those teams turning it around outside of the Dallas Mavericks pretty quickly.
The Spurs, I wasn't surprised because I know that Dylan Harper was the only lottery pick that the Spurs worked out, and then he had 2 workouts. He worked out at Don Bosco Prep. I'm an alum of Don Bosco Prep, and I know that the Spurs took the trip down there to check him out, and actually told Dylan Harper that we're not trading to get Kevin Durant. We're picking you with the 2nd overall pick. I know that Phoenix had offered the 2nd and the 14th overall pick to get. Or we're looking for the second and the 14th overall pick with San Antonio to get him, and that they were looking to really build not just amongst Dylan Harper, but Wemby, Stephon Castle, and De'Aaron Fox. And so you added the Dylan Harper to that team that was already stacked. So it wasn't really a surprise. Like you already had a banging ice cream sundae. You just added some Heath Bar Crunch, some caramel.
Well, that is the worst chocolate bar to add in. That is, I mean, you could have gone Twix, you could have gone Snickers, Heath.
Only the classics.
Ah,
I'm trying to think of what I could provide for maybe some Kit Kats, a nice little crunch in there.
Kit Kat would be good. Anything but Heath.
Listen, some people like Spurs, some people like Oklahoma. The point is, you got the topping of your choice. So if you like Kit Kat and you like Snickers or Nestle, cool. I like Heath Bar. I like Payday. I have tastes that may be different, but I don't have a problem with Kit Kat as well. I just wanted to sound different and not say what everybody else had to say.
Now I got you. But what you talk about the impact of guys like that. They already have foundational pieces that could provide for a championship team. What do you think about Keldon Johnson? A guy like that used to drop 20 points for the Spurs when they didn't have too much talent on the team. Now he won 6th man of the year. As Sixers fans, I think it's impressive that a guy like Kelly Oubre can be dropping what people claim to be empty stats on a team like the Charlotte Hornets when they're kind of in like the doomsday and they don't really have too much going on, and then come over to a playoff team and make the impact and be an on-ball defender as well as hit his spot points that he needs to hit. So I think roster construction in that way, and you talk about the NBA draft, either drafting a lottery pick guy or going out and getting a solidified veteran. I feel like those are the type of things that you consider when you make those roster construction decisions.
He's having Nestle Crunch impact on a Sixers team. And at the end of the day, I feel like you need the guys to do the dirty work. Every team has their stars, but then you have guys who fill a role. He's playing meaningless minutes in Charlotte as a member of the Hornets, and then he comes to the 76ers and he does what he needs to do. And you see that across the board. You asked me about Keldon Johnson, and I think the word or the phrasing that comes to mind off the bat is self-preservation. He preserved his energy and his star status, or at least borderline star status, for the betterment of the team. And if you're able to win a championship in doing so, I think the Spurs are on the cusp of doing that. I still think Oklahoma City is the better team in the Western Conference this year, but I think that San Antonio is this close. I think they're missing a Draymond Green type player. They're a Draymond Green type player away, San Antonio, from building something that is worthwhile for the foreseeable future, and they're this close. They have the start, have the right role players, they have the right complementary players, they have a plethora of point guards, and I think it comes down to just how you construct a roster and what you complement them with, which is my lament about the 76ers and a game one loss to the Knicks, where you need additional players. But I also don't think people saw Philly coming. I don't think Philly saw Philly coming.
Yeah, we talked about them having issues with the first game that Joel plays, and obviously this was game one, but he played in game 7 versus the Celtics. His first game back in the Celtics series, it kind of seemed like they were overwhelmed. They may not, Nick Nurse, the coach, may not have even known that he was going to be available, and the way that he set up the defense and the offensive sets for the game didn't really correlate to success for them, and then they come back and go on the run that they do in that series. I kind of feel like that about game one versus the Knicks. They kind of got overwhelmed. They are on like a short schedule versus a team that they've seen in the playoffs that they're like arguably a rival with. And I feel like this could be a game that they could just throw out the window, squash, and then you just look at it. You got to win 4 out of 6 games, but 3 are on the road and 3 are at home.
You said a mouthful. I think the Philly faithful, who are anybody who's on the main line, South Jersey, and the actual city of Philadelphia, I will give the Sixers some home cooking in game 3 and game 4, but the Sixers definitely have to steal one in game 2 if they hope to be successful. That 0-2 feeling is never good. So if you can go 1-1 and then go to Philly and get at least one, you got a series.
Yeah, and I think that like you said, you got to win 1 in Boston. And so I think with them losing game 1, I feel like every Sixers fan knew going into games 1 and 2, you would just have to win 1. I don't think any of us expected us to win both. And when you look at which game they were likely to lose, it was probably game 1 off of short rest. And bringing up the attendance at the now named Xfinity Mobile Arena, I saw somebody on Twitter posted on the resale market. They said 56% of the tickets sold went to New Jersey and New York, which I think is so misleading because that could literally be 50% South Jersey and 6% North Jersey and New York. So even if it's, call it splits and say half of the resale tickets went to Knicks fans, that's only the resale tickets. And that's half, hypothetically. So to me, it's looking like it's going to be a strong Philly presence in games 3 and 4.
And what do you think the impact of like a guy like Joel Embiid coming out of the press conference and saying, don't sell your tickets to Knicks fans? What do you think the way that Knicks fans hear that and the way that they would show up in New York at the Garden, what do you think the impact of that is? Because I feel like that's like just like adding fuel to the fire to get those fans even rowdier in New York.
I want him to wire me the money, so I like we're talking shit.
Yeah, he said he's got
So you have that power, then put your money where your mouth is. That was my thought process when I heard him say it.
Well, what do you think the overall national narrative? We're obviously Philadelphia sports guys. The overall national narrative of Joel Embiid is right now. We know Jaylen Brown has been very critical on his stream, saying that he thinks Joel is great but flops. But what do you think? Did Joel actually change the narrative a little bit of himself to the public NBA view after that series versus the Celtics and coming back the way that he did?
People who are basketball nuance know who Joel Embiid is. And, you can talk about his antics or his gimmicks or what have you, but when it's time to play, he plays. I mean, this is a man who embodies the Rocky Balboa phrases that people use ad nauseum. I'll just say to you, just so you guys are aware, I'm very tied to the Philadelphia area. I went to Eastern University on the main line and, worked downtown and took classes at community college of Philadelphia in the summertime. So I have a great respect for the city of Philly and the surrounding areas. And I know that, that heart and that grit is what Philly fans appreciate. But aside from that grit, winning has to be on that menu. After a while, being disappointed every year is kind of, it's disappointing. Like you look at the Eagles, they're the top of the food chain because they won more recently. Then I guess the Flyers are second tier, and then
yeah, usually the Phillies are like Phillies and Eagles are. I mean, the Eagles are the kings. Phillies are right there. The Flyers, this is the first time the Flyers made the playoffs since 2019, so they're kind of getting themselves back in the mix. But that adds fuel to the fire of another winter sports team putting themselves in the playoff mix and winning a playoff series just like that, because we really cover the Sixers, and I watch maybe the Flyers once or twice a week, but everyone's correlating into the same fields of we're all diehard Sixers and Flyers fans right now.
Of course. And to me, it reminds me of 94 when the Knicks and the Rangers were both in the championship, their respective leagues. And, it seems like there's that parity regionally, just like in Chicago, where the Blackhawks and the Bulls would traditionally compete. Like it's cool to see that. But, I feel like over the last year or so, the Sixers have kind of been on the back burner, but now they've given fans something to cheer for. But I think the Knicks are built to win a championship this year, but it's a matter of, first they got to get back past the Sixers. But I also think that this has the potential to go 6 or 7 games. I don't think that game 1 is indicative upon a whole series.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Do you think the X factor is actually not the personnel of the Knicks roster, but the change that they made in the coaching department?
I don't think they should have fired Tibbs.
Yeah, I just think I know a lot of fans specifically. He's a great coach. He's coached some of the best players in the league with all of his different stops in the NBA. I just think not only the fans were a little upset, it kind of seems like the players on the roster felt like they were just going through a little bit more wear and tear. I think it might have been Mikal Bridges that spoke out verbally during like one of the post-game pressers, talking about how it's just like so much workload for guys to go through that. But I mean, they do have depth on the roster, and they've had guys like Mitchell Robinson in the mix. But in a playoff series, how much can you rely on a guy like Mitchell Robinson if he's not going to be making free throws? Like those are the trade-offs of playoff basketball to regular season basketball that people don't understand.
I think defensively, you're going to rely on a Mitchell Robinson sticking a Joel Embiid more than you're going to rely on a Karl Anthony Towns. Defensively on Embiid, I feel like if I'm the coach of the Knicks, I'm looking at Towns defensively covering a Paul George or an Edgecombe more than covering defensively, a Joel Embiid. But I also think that when you talk about a Tibbs and you talk about his coaching resume and his pedigree, I think that Mike Brown's resume is severely understated.
Oh, 100%. Bench coach for the Golden State Warriors all those years. I mean, the original, when I was growing up, the original LeBron guy, the coach for the Cavs back in the day. So dude's been around and seen everything.
But prior to that, he was a disciple of Donnie Walsh during the Pacers tenure, and also got on-the-job experience as an assistant coach under Greg Popovich in San Antonio with the Spurs. And Mike Brown and I actually talked about that last week, and he talked about how during the regular season, I asked him how he was able to remain so calm during the playoffs, and he said that something that he learned from Greg Popovich was that during the regular season, you wow out, you get off, you stomp, you yell, you become demonstrative. But when the playoffs start, you sit down, you don't roam around too much, and you focus on the task at hand. And I think most people don't even realize that he goes that far back. They think about LeBron James, they think of in the Cavs, and then go to the finals of 7 against the Spurs. You think about his 2 tenures with the Lakers as a head coach. You think about his time as an assistant with the Warriors, and you think about his time as the head coach with Sacramento, which I never thought that was a perfect fit for him anyway. Yeah. But I feel like for Mike Brown, it's his time, and if he's able to win a championship with the Knicks, that puts him, amongst the greats who have done it in New York. Like the Knicks haven't won a championship since Walt Clyde Frazier was a player and not wearing crazy suits.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
but
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut him, but I mean, similar to the Sixers, we haven't won anything since 1983. I mean, it's been just as insanely long of a time, really. The Sixers are starved for,
and they've been searching for roster construction my entire life, being 29 years old now. Since like 1997, my conscious level may be a little bit past the 2001 run of the finals, but I think 2003 or 4, we had 3 or 4 previous of the past decade #1 overall NBA draft picks on the roster. Derek Coleman's. We're trying to do everything to find out what the recipe is. We brought in Chris Webber, the infamous for the Michigan timeout thing, and that didn't really work out. And then we had to get up and give up on Iggy And then after that happens, we felt like we finally had something. We trade Drew Holiday at the height of his powers, and then we start the process. So this is stuff. I mean, I don't know if anybody's been through more pain as a basketball NBA fan of a team that actually is in the mix, but can't get over the hump than the Sixers have of like the past 25 years.
Fair.
Yeah, and I mean, back in 01, that's the last time we really thought we had hope. Allen Iverson takes the Sixers to the finals. Game 1, you win on the road in LA, and
The only game the Lakers lost in that playoffs as well.
Yeah, and then if I'm not mistaken, the Lakers won the next 4, and that was that. Then you fast forward to 2018, 2019. This looks like a team that can get it done. It's a stacked starting 5, not much of a bench, but a stacked starting 5. You go up, I think, 2-1 on the Raptors, and then in Game 7, the Kawhi shot happens. So it's just been constant pain as a Sixers fan.
And of all those, the Tyrese Halliburton shot we saw in New York last year, maybe that's obviously meme worthy. And the shot we saw from RJ Barrett a couple days ago, the still image of Joel and Ben Simmons in front of Kawhi, and you see and you know the defenders. We're talking, this image features one of the greatest players of all time and 2 of the top level defenders in the entire league. And you just see Kawhi squatting down, and everybody's like, yeah, this is like a picture that will last a lifetime in the NBA. So you've also lasted a lifetime, it feels like, in the NBA, covering the NBA. I want to open up a little can of worms here. The GOAT debate. Has it changed at all since you've been covering it? And now do you think things can change with the impact LeBron is making at this age with the lack of resources currently that he has with the Lakers?
I don't think the GOAT debate is contingent upon LeBron in that way. I think that the GOAT debate is like Lamb Chops TV show. It's the song that never ends. I don't know if that went over your head. You're too young to remember that show, but
I'm trying to dive in the filing cabinet. But
I got nothing there.
There's a TV show that was on PBS called Lamb Chop, and the song goes, "This is the song that never ends," and they keep singing it over and over and over again. If you go on YouTube, there's a whole loop that plays for like half an hour, 45 minutes. But you gotta, it's the ending to the TV show.
Yeah.
Lamb Chop, play along. That's your homework assignment for today. But I feel like for LeBron and Michael, if there was, I don't feel like that's really a GOAT debate, because LeBron is the byproduct of sneaker deals, of $30 million to $50 million 1-year deals with teams, the branding, the endorsement. Like, to me, Dr. J was the first Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan took the baton and ran with it. Kobe was the byproduct of Michael. LeBron was the byproduct of Michael. I feel like the constant comparing, you can't enjoy one player without bashing the other. You can't enjoy Heath Bar Crunch and like Kit Kat too.
Facts.
I think this whole thing about legacy, and it's like an ending game of Tetris. Like, it is what it is. You like Michael, you like LeBron, you like who you like. I don't think it's as simple as the GOAT debate. To me, prior to Michael Jordan, or rather prior to LeBron James breaking Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's scoring record, to me, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the GOAT because he owned the scoring record. But centers don't get the same wide receiver, quarterback, running back treatment that guards and swingmen do. So I just think that whole GOAT debate is great for debate. It's good for television. It's good for shows like First Take. But stop fucking with LeBron, because at the end of the day, when he retires, you're going to miss him when he's gone.
Oh,
Appreciate
100%.
what it is.
And you summed it up perfectly. I've been a massive LeBron fan down to the LeBron Zoom Generation 2s with the strap. In 2003, in second grade, I had to take them back to the store because I have ADHD. So I was kind of beating them up really quickly in my tenure of having them. And then my mom made me bring them back to the store. And it started this sicko love of shoes, streetwear, basketball, and all the above. But with that being said, I have never been able to fully appreciate Michael Jordan because I have to stand up for LeBron in all of these conversations forever.
I mean, I've been blessed to have been in a locker room with Michael Jordan when he was a member of the Chicago Bulls during the Last Dance era, and was around Dennis, was around Scotty, was around Phil Jackson and Tex Winter and all those guys. And Michael was a beast. Michael was something that you'd never seen before. When I met Michael Jordan, I was like, when we spoke, it was like you're not in my TV, like what? Why not? So like, I've been around Kobe, I've been around LeBron. I think the thing that's similar between all three is they have aura. Funny enough, Joel Embiid has a similar aura when you're around him. Certain guys have that aura in the league. Draymond Green, as a supremely talented role player, has that aura. There's certain guys that have it, but ultimately, I tend to appreciate the greats. Dr. J to this day has that aura. When you're around him, Allen Iverson has that aura. I know Allen a little differently. I've sat at a poker table with him, and have watched him lose some money. I've also won some money sitting at the table.
You know what's funny? I've seen Allen Iverson in person once, and it was at Live Casino, and I saw him sitting there.
I know a lot of people that have Allen Iverson stories too, but yeah, I mean, you talk about Philadelphia basketball, of everybody that's come through in the past and before, the staple point is right there with Allen Iverson. I love Dr. J. I obviously didn't have a chance to watch him live or in person. Joel Embiid is that face of the generation now. Andre Iguodala had it for a little bit of time until they moved off him. Jrue Holiday had it for a little bit of time, but those two guys weren't on the same like talent level, upper echelon like as those guys were. But they're also perfect role-playing championship players where, I mean, Jrue Holiday, that's what makes me salty as a Sixers fan, seeing him move on from the Sixers and go win championships elsewhere and help out Giannis in that department. And then also Andre Iguodala, who was the same thing for the Warriors.
Well, I will say one thing about that, and this is coming from somebody who's always been a massive Andre Iguodala fan. He's the reason why I was a big fan of the Warriors during his tenure there. But the one thing I will say is the difference between a guy like Iggy or Jrue Holiday and guys like AI and Joel Embiid is when Iguodala was thrusted into the role of being the number one option. Unlike with Allen Iverson, first of all, it was a role that wasn't really suited for Iggy. That just wasn't the kind of player he was. And so he started receiving a lot of hate from the fan base. Like they didn't have the same love for him as they did for AI or Joel because he just wasn't able to fulfill that role of being the guy. So I think that's a big difference there between a guy like Iggy or a guy like Jrue and, legends like Embiid and Iverson. As much as I love Iggy, because I do.
I also think Iguodala came to Philly at a point where you had a logjam where Chris Webber was there, Lou Williams was there. They were competing in the Atlantic Division against the Knicks. And it was clear that Allen Iverson still felt that it was his team. And to me, observing it, there was a power struggle with what this Sixers team was going to become. You're dealing with a Chris Webber who wasn't as explosive, but was a passing big at that point. And you were dealing with an Iguodala who I don't think the national audience knew. Like, we look at Iguodala as a legend because he won championships with the Warriors, but we didn't look at Iguodala that way in Philly. It took him going to Denver for people to realize how talented he was, and he bounced and went to the Warriors and did his thing.
Yeah, I think he was so isolated to the Philadelphia market that when people saw what Denver was willing to give up for him via trade, they're like, all right, well, the rest of the league is kind of taking notice now. He made the All-Star team, I think, with the Sixers on a stat line of 14, 15 points per game, but almost like a Ben Simmons type triple-double point forward type stat line.
Yeah, with elite defense to boot.
Yeah, he was also an amazing defender. And then that's one of my core memories as a Sixers fan growing up is the dunk contest with AI from behind the backboard off that. That's
he got robbed in that dunk contest.
Oh, yeah,
Nate Robinson winning by jumping over a 5'4" Spud Webb was absolutely ludicrous. Off the back of the backboard to Iggy where he caught it, took it the other way and slammed it. That was one of the best dunks I've ever seen. He was absolutely robbed. But one thing I will say to add on to Iggy's defense is, I mean, he's one of the few guys that have won a finals MVP purely off of their defense. He was tasked with guarding LeBron James, of all people, in that series, and the Warriors ended up winning the finals, and he gets finals MVP off of defense. I mean, that is extremely impressive. Really is.
Yeah, that's also, something I'll I had to let stick out a little bit when I talk about LeBron is like, some of the consolation prizes that people were able to win because of the voters' fatigue in the MVP race, where he won 4 out of 5 MVPs. Derrick Rose splits it up in between, and then he doesn't win another one ever again, which is pretty crazy to me. But what do you think about the direction of NBA? We're talking about a lot of OG basketball when we were growing up. What do you think about the direction of the NBA and a team that is always in the mix in the Celtics, especially when they're fully healthy? I think they would have the odds right there, especially in the East, next to the Thunder, of winning the championship. But they also live and die by the three, and everybody's really starting to take notice nationally about it. What do you think about the new age of basketball? Everyone says Steph Curry ruined basketball. I don't think that's true. You just can't play a certain way that you're not capable of playing, in my opinion.
Positionless basketball has shifted the game of basketball. And so you have a Wemby who's 7'4", 7'5", that can play the three position and is Yao Ming height. I think what you're seeing now, I saw a post on Instagram the other day, and I posted in my stories. The algorithm is for right now. Your art is forever. I think with basketball, if the three-point shot is the algorithm, hybrid big men will make a comeback. The mid-range game will make a comeback. DeMar DeRozan and Anthony Edwards thrive in a mid-range game in a world where there are Steph Currys and Klay Thompsons. I also, to directly answer your question about the Boston Celtics, I was on a show today. I taped it with Robert Ory, and I asked Robert. I said to him, you and I, last time we sat down, we went viral because I asked you, if Michael Jordan hadn't retired, would the Bulls still have won those 2 championships that the Houston Rockets won? And we laughed about it, but I said, I'll take that and I raise you this. If Jason Tatum had played in that game, would we even be having a conversation about the 76ers in the playoffs right now? And the Celtics, they stood a good chance. And so for me, when I look at the fact that Tatum sat out, it raises some questions about how healthy Tatum was going into the playoffs. Nothing I've heard. It's just a thought in my mind. That's one. But two, the direction of the Celtics looks like what in the future? Do you move Derek White? Do you move Jaylen Brown? Or do you keep the team the same and you get a healthy Tatum who can compete against a Detroit, who can compete against a New York Knicks in the playoffs next year? Because sometimes when you tear a team down, you actually strip it of doing something great. One of my biggest complaints about basketball in the last 10 years is that the bubble championship Lakers never got a chance to defend their crown after winning it the next year because of money issues, because of complaints about front office, because of complaints about coaching.
That team was ridiculous. That team features probably 6 to 7 guys that could potentially be head coaches in the NBA one day. And Rajon Rondo is actually close to, I don't know if you have any scoop on the Pelicans and Rajon Rondo's situation, but that's something that I'm hearing has some real legs to it. But also to hit on Wemby, I mean, if everyone's starting a franchise in the NBA right now, you mentioned Anthony Edwards. It's probably Wemby, though. It's probably Wemby as the number one guy you start a franchise with if you consider like youth and the entire complete package. I think last night when the Spurs lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves, though, he was like 0 for 9 or 0 for 8 from deep. What do you think about the big men now that they're shooting threes and their matchup? Some guys let them stay out on the three-point line. We know how dangerous Wemby is as a finisher getting to the rack. Do you think guys are just settling for these type of shots, especially the big men, because the way that they're specifically being guarded? But that's also the game plan that the opposing coach is implementing on defense.
I think when you're in your 20s, you see the court differently than you do in your mid-20s to your early 30s. Kind of like in football, the quarterback sees the field differently in their 20s than they do in their 30s. When you become 30, there's more of a finite way that you view the court. In answer to your question, I use Dirk Nowitzki as a muse, where people loved what he could do at his height and how he's able to get shots off and more. But as he got older, he developed more of a post game. that was hybrid, and where you're competing against the Duncans of the world, you're competing against the Shaqs of the world and more. And I believe that that's eventually what's going to happen with Wemby. But I feel like Wemby, to me, is more, his development will be similar to a hybrid of Dirk and Kevin Garnett. As Kevin Garnett, I mean, you remember Kevin Garnett, there was times where their point guard in Minnesota during his first stint didn't play, and he was the starting point guard under Flip Saunders. And so when I look at Wemby, like, yeah, he's got all the tools of the flashy toy that can do some of everything on the court, but you also want to preserve energy as you get older. You want to be able to conserve energy going to the fourth quarter. The air and in the playoffs is different than it is in the regular season, and you want to find ways to kind of to conserve what it is that you do. So we're talking about 0 for 7, 0 for 8 today. 5 to 10 years from now, is it 1 championship, 7 championships, 8 championships? Like I feel like.
And also, he set the record for NBA playoffs most blocks in a game last night as well. So on the flip side, he can't do everything for you every single night, especially with a deep team like that. They're getting a solid contribution from Dylan Harper finally in those Wemby-less games versus the Trailblazers until that one game in the second half, he really started getting going. Like they were missing that piece, and it kind of seemed like that series was starting to get interesting with Scoot Henderson finally popping off.
Yeah, to me, that's why, San Antonio and Oklahoma have a level of parity, because I've made trips quite a bit to Oklahoma this season, and I've seen what Oklahoma look like without SGA and without Jalen Williams, and they still have other pieces on that team that show up and spell guys and miss time. And I felt like in that Portland series, you saw something similar there without Wemby, where you saw guys like Dylan Harper stepping up. De'Aaron Fox is still on that team. You have other guys on that team that can do what needs to be done in the absence of their star. Like, I think that's what makes teams great in moments where their stars are not available, or when their stars are kind of, struggling or what have you. You have guys that can spell you in those deep minutes. And that's what happened in that Portland series. And I don't really think that game 1 against Minnesota is indicative upon a whole series, just like I don't think the game 1 with the Sixers and the Knicks are indicative upon a whole series. And, 11 blocks is great. But unfortunately, Friday is one of my favorite movies, that whole Friday series. But Wemby cannot be Baby D. She cannot do hair, babysit, and sell weed at the same time. At some point, he's got to do something. The cops seen that movie, that Baby D, you don't know when to kick the door in.
Yeah. I love the second one. I love the Cholo on the second one.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, it was Friday after next, right?
Yeah, that was
yeah.
No, next Friday is the second one.
Oh yeah, no, they had a couple sequels that were cooking. I was a big scary movie guy with the Wayans brothers. That was like my favorite growing up, and they had Shaq and all those cameos that they had in there. Back, even I think that was Kevin Hart's start of acting, like when he started like popping off. Right around that time too. But it was interesting. Speaking of guys that were popping off, I didn't think SGA would arguably be a consensus 2-time like MVP. But I was put on notice by him in 2019 when he was versing that Warriors team when he was still with the Clippers, and they won 2 games, and he dropped like 25 in 2 of those games, and he wasn't even anybody that was on the radar really in the NBA at that point. And then you saw, obviously, I remember the tweet from I think at the time it was Adrian Wojnarowski, obviously one of the biggest names that there is in sports media, and he tweeted the Thunder had just traded Paul George to the Los Angeles Clippers for a record-setting collection of draft picks. So I just remember that coming through on the East Coast like at a random time. But I'm saying that in reference to, you talked about Wemby being that next face of the NBA, potentially winning numerous championships for a team in the Spurs, and an organization that has 6 under their belt in the past, 25, 30 years. So do you see anybody right now that's may not be getting enough love in the NBA that could really put themselves in the upper echelon and start trending in a complete different direction of what people thought their progression path would be? I know that's a deep question to ask you right there. There's a deep dive, but
nothing off the top of my head. But
I know there's the Jalen Johnsons of the world. We kind of saw that series played out. I felt like Paolo Banchero could be a little bit more developed for the Magic right now than he was, and I think that was a huge moment in his career that he just kind of let fall through the cracks. But I was also saying about the Magic, I don't know how you felt about them getting rid of their coach. When Franz Wagner hasn't been able to go for the Magic, that he's like the cog of the engine for everything that they have going.
Definitely. And, I talked to Jamal on Easter Sunday, and one of the things he said to me was that we're not our record doesn't reflect who we are, and we've dealt with injuries the last few years, and they basically haven't been able to take that next step up. And what you saw for the Orlando Magic, I want to say like this, the second to last week of the season was an Orlando team that went on a run. They were in the West. They beat the Mavs, then they beat the Pelicans. Then they came home after the Pelicans went on Easter Sunday. They beat the Detroit Pistons, and then they went into the play-in tournament and they lost the first game. Then they beat Charlotte, and then they got in, and then they beat Detroit, and then they didn't beat Detroit because they came back, or rather they didn't close the series, and history repeated itself with that 3-1 with Detroit there. But I think they played hard. I think that there will be a lot of suitors that will go after Jamal Mosley. You asked me about the Pelicans and about Rajon Rondo, as well as Darvin Ham. That, from what I'm told, around the league and particularly in the Pelicans organization, that interview process left the Pelicans very impressed with both. I know that Darvin Ham did exceptionally well in his interview process with the Pelicans, and they were amazed at what his plan looked like moving forward if he is to become the next head coach of that team. But the one thing about Rondo, I think that is different, is that a point guard is an extension to the coach on the floor, and a lot more point guards retiring are getting jobs right away. I know that Rondo has been an advanced scout for the Milwaukee Bucks for some time, and under his former head coach Doc Rivers, and he would instantly earn the respect of the players in that Pelicans locker room.
Would you think Chris Paul could Chris Paul's name emerge possibly as a point guard? I mean, he sees the game at a whole different level, and I think Rajon Rondo may be a little bit less like overall talented than Chris Paul, but I mean, through seeing the game through a certain lens, Rajon Rondo, I mean, he's one of my favorite players of all time. I just like that Lakers team. That just shows how crazy stacked that Lakers team was that won the championship.
Rondo has a ring, and Rondo also specifically to the Pelicans organization is more recent and has a history with that team. I mean, that's a Pelicans team that people thought could go to the finals.
Yeah.
With DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis and others. And, that was the last excitement that they had in New Orleans. But Darvin Ham, I know has history and taking a team to the playoffs, and it just didn't pan out the way that he would have liked in Los Angeles. But Rondo, there would be a learning curve, and he definitely would have to get a support staff on his assistant coaching staff that would help him in that learning curve. But he's also been coaching on the AAU level. He's also been an advanced scout for the Bucks for some time. So it's interesting that the finalists for that coaching job are two colleagues. They're both Milwaukee Bucks employees.
Yeah,
Darvin Ham and Rajon Rondo. So,
and that was the Sixers' former coach, obviously Doc Rivers. We weren't too pleased with his contribution to Philadelphia in the time being here, but no coach in the NBA is ever safe. I remember when the Raptors moved off Dwayne Casey in 2018 when he won Coach of the Year, and then they pivot to Nick Nurse, and then you see they move on from DeMar DeRozan and they flip that into Kawhi. And that you talk about the aura thing. I love DeMar DeRozan as an NBA hardcore fan. But there's levels to the game at times. And like when you are able to take DeMar DeRozan, who's a perennial, however many all-star time that he is, and turn that into Kawhi Leonard, you see the instant impact that's able to make. That team is also one of the most ridiculously talented NBA teams that we have ever seen. We're talking about Norman Powell. We're talking about, I mean, you go down the entire list, Fred VanVleet. These guys didn't even have household names for themselves. And you go like 1 through 12 or 13 down to their big men. I mean, that team might even be better than the Lakers team. And the Lakers team was like all-time players that was stacked up on there. Mm-hmm. So it's just crazy where the direction of things go with the NBA and then how teams move off of people. But as for the Sixers in this series for Game 2 moving forward, after you lose by 39 points, you're obviously tapped in to the NBA. You talk to these coaches. What would the mindset actually be going into a game like this? Because you don't have the comfortability of going back to Philadelphia in the Xfinity Mobile Arena. You're still in New York, and you're still in front of that fan base, and it's not going to get easier emotionally to perform. They're obviously professionals. They get paid to perform this way. But what would you say as a high-level NBA guy to your team in a situation like this where you're kind of not dealing with the adequate rest, I would say, that you're supposed to deal with, and you have Joel Embiid, kind of the cog in the machine, even though we know it's Tyrese Maxey's team right now. Joel's still the engine, 34, 12, and 6 in that closeout game. What would you say to your team going into game 2?
Take it a minute at a time, a second at a time, a play at a time, a quarter at a time. And don't fuck up.
Yeah. That's the perfect epitome of that is like Adem Bona has played himself out of the role because those offensive transition moments where he's just like literally stunting an entire offensive transition possession by taking an offensive foul, trying to do too much, getting to the rim as opposed to passing it out to all your shooters. And it seems like the Knicks are always making the right decision. Mm-hmm. So on those defensive sets last night, like I said, Nick Nurse, I thought Mike Brown really came out with a implemented game plan. They had Joel kind of just chasing off the pick and roll, and then there would just be an open shooter in the pocket spot in the corner off that, or wherever Joel went, there was an inside driving pass to make. It just seems like they were kind of putting Joel in a lot of the defense to try to maybe the UFC leg kick kind of style to like get your opponent, down a little bit so he doesn't have as much energy on the offensive side of the ball.
Good assessment. I would agree.
So how do you see this series playing out for the rest of the series? I know you do have connections to the Knicks as well. You're from the New York and New Jersey area. How do you see the Knicks finishing this, and how, because I assume that you had them in this series, but how do you think they would get it done? Do you think they can keep playing the way that they played in game 1, or do you think there's obviously going to be learning curves to how the series plays out?
Well, I'm from New York by way of New Jersey, but I'm not a homer in that sense. I'm a basketball purist in that sense. I think that the Sixers, to get as far as they got, surprised many, but it came down to grinding it out, which is why I don't count the Sixers out. But I do see this going 5 to 6 games, and if I'm to judge based upon game 1. They have a lot of work to do, but many people counted the Sixers out against Boston. So while, it would on paper look as if the Knicks are going to take it, I do have the Knicks taking it. I don't count out the Sixers because they've proven against Boston, a top tier team, that they can compete. That's my answer. Not to play it safe. You can't sleep on, man, and that's how I look at it. I think in order for the Sixers to win it, I think one, defensively, you have to find a way to stop Jalen Brunson, and the Sixers seemingly weren't able to do that last night. In addition to that, I think getting Mitchell Robinson rattled, if I'm the Sixers, is how the Sixers find a way to get it done, so that Embiid can get more shots and can get more presence in the paint. In addition to that, I would say let VJ get Paul George out of his game so that VJ Edgecombe has to play hero basketball. To me, VJ Edgecombe, although he's had a great rookie season, I think in the eyes of many, he's still unproven, although I think he's a hell of a basketball player. But if you get Paul George out of his rhythm and you get Joel Embiid, I just think there's so many variables there that I do think that everybody knows each other's plays at this point. Everybody knows how their offensive sets. Everybody knows who's doing what. And I think the one thing that I do like about the playoffs, and I've seen it in other series, and I think you'll see it in this series because I think it's going to get physical, is that the refs are letting them play.
Yeah.
And to me, that is the Sixers' strengths. I'm not saying cheat, but I'm saying in order for the Sixers to have a chance to win, they got to be physical.
Yeah.
And not fall in love with threes.
I think that's one of my biggest worries. If Joel's not able to keep himself out there, whether the Knicks are making him chase on defense and get him in foul trouble, the trade-off to Andre Drummond is he is still a great player, a great traditional big, but at the end of the day, he's not able to make free throws and post up in the paint and get the offense facilitating going in that type of direction. So that's what kind of scares me as a Sixers fan moving forward, because I know Mike Brown's probably going to spam attacking Joel on defense because that's just seems like the best method on paper to get him out of his game and just to kind of wear down out of him so he doesn't have that same energy to use on the offensive end. And you already have Paul George and Kelly Oubre chasing. It kind of makes everybody tired. And the way that Tyrese Maxey plays getting downhill when he does, this is going to be a long series for the Sixers. They want to get back into the swing of things here. So me and Dante also talked about, we looked at the top of the East and what's going on in the NBA playoffs. You had the Magic almost beating the 1 seed, the Pistons. As Sixers fans, we beat the Magic in the playoff game or the play-in game. So we were kind of happy about that. But the beginning of the Celtics series, we're like, should we have lost that game to get the 8th seed to match up with the Pistons? And that obviously would have been popcorn TV, must-watch TV because of Tobias Harris and that whole situation, especially if he would have had a game in Game 7 that he did versus the Magic versus Sixers. That would have been
what was that about?
Crazy,
what was that about? His last Game 7 with us, he only takes 2 shots from the floor.
Yeah, he gave us a Wawa goose egg in his last game.
And then in a Game 7 for Detroit, it's funny, too, because I was watching the game and I saw him miss a 3. And I texted in my group chat with my brothers. I said, feels good seeing Tobias Harris miss 3s in a Game 7 for another team. And then right after I sent that, he just goes on the most ridiculous run that we've never seen him do in a Sixers uniform.
I think it was the one quarter, second or third quarter, or by halftime, like 17 or something like that. So, he just tears it up. But where I was going with that is the top of the East features a team like the Pistons that are relatively new to the top. You have the solidified teams like the Knicks and the Celtics. The Bucks were up there, but they have a bunch of craziness going on over there. Roster construction moving forward for the Sixers, how do you look at it with Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe ushering in a new era, but still having those OG talented guys like Paul George and Joel Embiid? How do you build that team moving forward with the opportunity to plant yourself in the top 4 of the East for years to come?
You need a smash mouth Mitchell Robinson type player on the Knicks.
Yeah.
For 2, figuring out how much longer Paul George is going to play. Does he retire a Sixer? And at the same time, how you can get Joel Embiid a light version of him on your roster. Like Drummond is cool, but to keep on the team, but they're 2 different styles, and this is not Andre Drummond from 2021, 2022. It's a different to me, Drummond has become in some aspects more of a 3-point shooter, and also a guy that is not as physical as Embiid. But Embiid at times has become a 3-point shooter, but he makes them and he still gets into the post.
Yeah.
You need someone that kind of mirrors Embiid's style of play when Embiid goes out.
Do you think that has to be a center though? Because Jalen Brown himself too, but Jalen Brunson is arguably the best post-up point guard in the entire NBA, and that's something that has been a big X factor for the Knicks offense, with him just taking advantage of size advantage, and he was doing that even with the Dallas Mavericks when he was putting himself on the scene during that playoff run.
And clearly, Deuce McBride and Jose Alvarado are not of that same ilk. So you bring up a point there, but in answer to your question, no, it doesn't have to be, but Drummond is his backup. So what does an alternative look like?
Yeah. I feel like it's hard to even carve yourself out as an offensive specific backup big in the NBA. So I don't really know where they would dive into the pool of finding a guy like that, because not too many teams rely on that position off their bench to be a scoring output. But then you see teams like the Thunder. I just feel like this series, from what the Celtics were throwing at the Sixers with Garza, Walsh that was playing small ball big at times, Vucevic, and the guys that they were just throwing the big men at the Sixers, and then now you go flash forward to Mitchell Robinson and Cat. It's just a whole different ballgame that you're dealing with, even though Cat's not the most defensively minded guy, but just that duo of itself. And that's kind of what the Thunder have as well, with Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet, obviously, too. And Chet's really versatile with the way that he's able to play. So we just got a couple more questions. I know you're a busy guy. You got to get out of here. Keep covering the NBA. We appreciate you for joining the podcast, Scoop B. So I know you said the Knicks are probably going to win in 5-6. That's your prediction. But who is somebody that you can see step up from either side in this series and start to be that X factor? You talked about VJ Edgecombe playing hero ball, and it's actually worked out for the Sixers a little bit. But is there somebody that's a little bit more under the radar on either side that you can see really, truly impacting the series moving forward?
Quentin Grimes.
Former Nick.
Mm-hmm.
I went on a monologue saying that Quentin Grimes is a part of the conversation of all the guys that have to help rebound for the Sixers in the Celtics series, because outside of the 5 to 6 guys they're playing, I mean, Quentin Grimes is getting that 25 to 29 minutes off the bench. He's crucial. And those Joel Embiid moments last night in game 1 were absolutely brutal for the Sixers. And that doesn't just singularly fall on Andre Drummond replacing him in the lineup. That falls on you taking a starter out of the lineup, and now you're technically with a bench unit because you're not with all your starters, and the impact everybody around them as opposed to just that position that's replacing the guy that's producing for you.
You said it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know I got a little sometimes wrap it up. I talk a little bit too much, but yeah, that's just what I'm seeing as a Sixers fan here. And just for the overall series in itself, with how the Knicks used to be not the deepest team and they used to make their starters go 40-plus minutes, that's what's actually making me worry as a Sixers fan, because it seems like we're on the side of the spectrum now where we only have 6 to 7 guys that we can rely on, and the Knicks have like a whole tool bag of – it seems like when the Knicks go to their bench, they have Jalen Brunson on the bench when Joel's on the bench as well, and then Miles McBride just comes in. Deuce McBride comes in and hits like 3 threes out of nowhere, and they just start going on a run.
Yeah, yeah. And, I mean, the Knicks also have – other pieces on that team, not named Deuce McBride.
Jordan Clarkson always makes me nervous. He can tap back into his 20.6 man of the year type ways too. So
you read my mind there. Jordan Clarkson definitely is a guy that can step up, and Jose Alvarado as well plays the same way with the Knicks that he did in New Orleans. But you know, the Knicks have definitely have really stepped up. I think a guy on the Knicks that I think you could see come alive that as far as just a name defensively for them is Ariel Hukporti. Defensively as a big man for the Knicks. I think in times where Mitchell Robinson might be struggling with fouls and things of that sort, I think Hukporti is a guy you'll see more defensively go against Embiid.
For sure. And last thing, do the Lakers have any chance in this series versus the Thunder? They're on the betting lines, plus 1,500. We talked about the deepest team in the league, solidified themselves in the upper echelon. At one point in time, I think for them to win the next 3 championships in the NBA, the betting odds were under plus 1,000, and that's an accumulation of 3 years and 3 seasons. So LeBron James, does he have anything to offer against this Thunder team?
Yeah, he has to offer his experience playing in the playoffs. So I think that's where he stands. But as far as going against Oklahoma, I think they definitely have their work cut out. For the Lakers have their work cut out. I think you're going to have to see a Rui Hachimura in 30 a game for that team, and you hope that by game 3 or game 4, Luka Doncic comes back. It's going to be interesting. I'll be at game 2 in Oklahoma, and I'm interested to see how long if the Lakers can prove people wrong. But Oklahoma definitely has a deep roster.
Yeah, for sure. And starting off in Oklahoma too with that playoff crowd is going to be very, very intense. And it's, you get behind the 8 ball, down 2 games, going back to LA, regardless of your crowd. I mean, it's definitely going to be tough. But Scoop B, once again, thank you for joining the podcast today, giving your insider insight. Hopefully some of these trends play out in the Sixers' favor, but we'll have to see for the rest of the series. But once again, thank you for joining the podcast and giving us your time today out of your busy schedule.
Thank you for the opportunity to be myself. Good luck with everything with you guys, and keep shining.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Scoopy. Thank you. So that was great to have Scoopy Robinson, NBA insider, man of many different things. Can't just pigeonhole him to an NBA insider. He's got a lot going on. He's a guy that is extremely talented, and I'm very grateful somebody like that, an OG, gives me an opportunity to showcase what I got in the sports media world. But, Dante, I don't know if there's anything that you weren't able to mention with Scoop B there that you want to hit on specifically before this is the last time we'll be live before Game 2 tomorrow night. So is there anything that you want to say going into Game 2 in New York tomorrow night?
No, I guess if I just have any closing statements, it's just going to be that I am quite nervous for this game too, because I mean, this is a must-win game. you don't win this game, you've likely lost the series. So it's a crucial game. I do have confidence we can get it done, but I am very nervous going into it. I will say, I will feel much better if, like a few minutes into the second quarter, it's still a close game. Because I feel like in the games where the Sixers have gotten blown out, they've gotten blown out early. But anytime the Sixers have kept the game close, a few minutes in or midway through the second quarter, the game has stayed close throughout.
Well, that's a good point, though. It's because it depends on.
They've won pretty much every close game this in the playoffs. So
I think it depends on like the trend of the game. If they're getting blown out, it really depends on where the series overall lies. Because we've seen in the Celtics series where they got blown out in most of the losses in that series, but they came back swinging and making things happen after that. So if they get blown out tomorrow and stack 2 games like that on top of each other, yeah, I'm nervous. But if they somehow find a way to win tomorrow, go 1-1, and then they go up 2-1 in Philadelphia, and then game 4 in Philadelphia plays out where they get blown out, which isn't going to be something you'll be pleased about in Xfinity Mobile Arena in Philadelphia. But at the end of the day, you were up on the series, and we kind of know the trend of them bouncing back after these blowout losses. So kind of just get the bad stuff out of the way. I would rather get blown out in my losses and then keep the games that I win competitive and then keep myself in the series, as opposed to losing in 5 or 6 games and then I keep it close at a 5-point deficit and then I just crumble at the end and then lose.
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, and this will be the last thing I say because I do got to get out of here. On top of that, I mean, when you look at Game 7 against Boston, how that was kind of the trend, the last thing you mentioned, how it was close throughout, and then at the end it looked like Boston in the final few minutes were going to pull ahead and take the W. To me, I think every Sixers team of years past during the Joel Embiid era loses that game. I think they all.
When you look up, I told you, you look up at the clock or you look at the stat line, 5 minutes left in the game. They're 2 for 12 in the quarter, shooting 16 point, whatever the decimals of that percent is. And you're like, dude, this is just, it's happening again.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing. This team now seems different because they actually did win that game. So this team has given me a lot of confidence that as long as they can keep the game close, I like their chances to win it. So it really is just about getting to the midway point of the second quarter and keeping it a close game, in my opinion. So I'm just going to be nervous until that point. And as long as it's a close game at that point, then I'm going to start feeling much better about the game.
Well, if we take history for what it is, you did say in the Game 7 preview show that you did not believe they would get it done. So you being nervous and having anxiety going into the game doesn't actually make me feel that bad as a Sixers fan, because we saw the last time that you felt like this. And you had a lot of reason to feel like that with the history of what we've been through as 29-year-old, or you clearly about to be 29 years old. I'm 29.
Okay, let's not leap ahead.
Yeah, so you're in Unk territory. You see the game just like Scoop B said, you see the game a little bit differently in your later 20s and early 30s as opposed to early in your 20s.
We're throwing early 30s into the mix. We're just jumping ahead 4 years. What are we doing?
You're turning what? And it's August. You're turning 34.
Journalism now.
34 in August?
No. I am 28 right now. Thank you. I'm not turning 30 this August.
Yeah, well, that interest level from all these teams out here looking to acquire you, you're fading out your athletic prime.
I will say my odds of making it to the NBA are definitely low at this point.
Yeah, not that slim compared to the 0% chance you had in your early 20s making it to the NBA.
Had I not twisted my ankle coming out of the Wawa that one time, I would have definitely made the league in my early 20s.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Yeah. And also for somebody like me, I do have 2 championships in my rec basketball, youth basketball organization. So I'm kind of seen as that guy that's
I won the title in 4th grade. I was our top perimeter defender. I was locking up their best point guard.
Yeah, so before everybody hit puberty and was able to grow into their actual athletic primes. But yeah. This is probably a conversation for another day, but if you want to catch another conversation about the Philadelphia 76ers, we will be live guaranteed on Friday. I'm not sure if Dante's going to be able to join me, but Friday for Game 3, we will definitely be live. Today was our time to talk a little bit about Game 2 and just the series in total. And then hopefully we'll definitely be live because the normal Paisan Sports podcast on Sundays around noon, 11 o'clock-ish Eastern time they will be playing on Sunday. So we'll have a pregame show for you that, as well as the entire coverage of Philadelphia sports between the Sixers, Flyers, Eagles, and Phillies. So thank you guys for tuning in to another special edition of the Paisan Sports Podcast. Your host, What's the Deal Sports, Dante DePlacido. Catch you guys later on this week.